Stop what you're doing and check your email open rates. Are they under 30%? If they are, then you're potentially leaving money on the table. And we need to fix that. And that's exactly what we're going to do in today's video. And hey, if we haven't met, I'm Elise Cartwright, founder of Hustle and Groove, and I have worked with over 1,000 creative entrepreneurs and helping them ditch social media and make sales with emails. And I want to talk to you about the nurture and sell framework. This is the exact framework that I have used to make daily sales for the last 12 months. And it's the exact framework that my members use as well. And one member in the last week just made $300 just from one email. And she followed the nurture and sell framework. So I'm literally going to walk you through this from start to finish so that you can start implementing this in your own business today. Before we dive into that though, I do want to kind of set the tone for why we do a nurture and sell and what it actually is. So at its core, the nurture and sell framework is storytelling. And there are 4 kind of core components that we're going to go through. But before you can really implement it, you do need to have stories that you can use. Now, I get this all the time where people say to me, I don't have stories, I'm not a storyteller, or nothing happens in my life. There's nothing for me to share. And I totally get it. I used to think that. I used to say things like, nothing happens in my day. My days are pretty much the same. And while that might be true, there are nuances, there are moments where things happen that you can use as a story. So before we dive into the nurture and sell framework, if you want to set yourself up for success, make sure that you have been implementing the Storybank practice. At its core, the Storybank practice is this very simple thing that you do every single day. And it is this: you answer this one question at the end of your day. What happened today? And what you're doing there is you're sitting down and just going back through your day and just recording all the things that happened. You sat down at your computer at 7 a.m. You opened your email, right? Whatever that looks like. But what you're going to do is really hone in on anything that was kind of out of the ordinary, anything that triggered you, right? If you got your knickers in a knot over something, or if somebody said something that was so funny, anything that just kind of stands out to you that might be a little bit different to what your normal day looks like. I use air quotes because at the end of the day, what is normal? So you need to kind of do that first. Once you've got your stories, then it's so much easier to dive into the actual framework. So let's go and do that now. Struggling with storytelling in your emails or figuring out what stories you could include in your emails, that's exactly what the newsletter Storybank training is all about. And it's an audio training. You can go through it. There are 14 prompts that are going to help you create stories. Now, you can go and find that on the link that is coming up on your screen right now, or you will see it in the description below. But go and check that out because that is going to help you start to develop stories, create stories that you can use in every single piece of your content, not just your emails. Okay, so I have a document that I'm going to walk you through that pretty much shows you exactly what the nurture and sell framework is all about. So the first thing that we want to do is to ensure our emails are actually getting opened, we want to have a subject line that is 5 words or less. My actual rule of thumb is to try and keep them to 3, 4 words. And I like to switch between kind of like a statement, a question, or a quote, right? So something that you've pulled from the email. Now, there's 2 ways that you can approach this. You can either choose the subject line first and use that as the prompt to write the entire nurture and sell email, or you can do your subject line last, which is my preference. I love to just go ahead and write the email and come back and write the actual subject line. But I know everyone's different. So those are kind of your 2 options. So you can see here, example subject line was, I still drank the water, ... So it's pulling in curiosity. Someone looking at this is like, well, how? What is that even talking about? Like, why is she talking about this? So you can see how this subject line came to be as we go through this actual framework. So the first thing that we want to do is use a story. Now I've got this thing called the Nurture Content Blueprints, and I've used an example that is called the Analogy Plus Translation Story. Now this is covered inside the Nurture and Sell framework training. There are Nurture Content Blueprints that basically give you about 12 different story frameworks that allow you to help you create a story. But we're going to go through this so you can kind of see what this looks like. So here's the starting story. And we always start our emails with a story when we're doing the Nurture and Sell framework. And the story was pretty simple. And this was a completely made up story. So this entire email is made up, but I wanted to use it because I think it shows clearly how this all works. So the first thing is story, right? That's the first step in the Nurture and Sell framework. And the story here was, I woke up at 3 a.m. last night. It was my own fault, really. I know that if I have a big glass of water before I go to bed, I will inevitably wake up around 3 a.m. to pee. So despite knowing and experiencing this to be true, I still drank the water. ... There's that subject line. You're probably not here for the play-by-play of my nightly ablutions, but while I was walking back to bed from the bathroom, it hit me that this bad habit is exactly what most people experience when they start out with their weekly email content. Now, here is where I'm transitioning into why this is going to be relevant to them. So the story transition is for anyone that's been on the same journey, had a similar experience, is looking for the solution, right? So for anyone that's trying to write content for their emails each week, you might relate. Maybe you're sitting down to batch write your emails on a Monday, but you know that this is your busiest day client-wise. So despite knowing this, you still attempt to write your emails. Now, hopefully at this point, I just want to pause. I hope that you're starting to see why that story now makes sense and how it's bridging and being brought in to showcase what exactly the story, why the story is relevant, right? That's kind of what's happening here. So maybe you're, they still attempt to write your emails, only they get pushed to the bottom of the to-do list because client work comes first, right? Question mark. Now we transition into what I like to call just an action step. The goal with every Nurture and Sell email is, yes, to sell, but also to provide value, because at any given time, there's only about 2 to 3% of your audience who are actually ready to buy. So we still want to provide value to the people who aren't, because the more that they see content like this coming to you, the more that they're actually going to be ready to buy from you sooner than you think. So then we're going to jump in with an action step. What can you do instead? That's kind of the action step from the Nurture and Sell framework training. What can you do instead? 1, find a day and time where you're not distracted. Time blocking is a good option. Make it a recurring task. 2, batch where possible. And 3, use headphones and play classical music or sound that helps you focus. And then I've said following these steps will go a long way to help you write email content every week without feeling like you should be working on something more important. Then we end with a call to action, and it's a pretty direct call to action, right? We don't need to beat around the bush. Want my entire email writing system? Question mark. You can grab your copy here using your special 30% discount code 30 off on the checkout page. And then you're going to sign off. And I always say, take care, lease XOXO. Right. So that's that. And then in the PS, we're just going to say, here's a quick peek at my own time blocking setup inside my Google Calendar. Hopefully this gives you some ideas on how you can get this set up for yourself. So there are 2 ways that you can actually write the last piece of your Nurture and Sell framework. You can actually flip the PS and the call to action around. So if you aren't intentionally in a promotion, right? So you're not in a promotion, you're just kind of writing your normal email or your newsletter, if that's what you want to call it, then you might want your call to action to go in the PS and it's more of a soft sell. Instead, then you might take what you've got in the PS here and put it back up into here, because then the call to action has switched. It's down in the PS. So it's always your call. It's always about what feels easiest for you, what feels natural for you. But that is, in its essence, the Nurture and Sell content framework. So there are a couple of things that you definitely want to avoid when using this framework. You want to avoid over teaching, right? You don't need to include a ton of stuff in this email. This is designed to be story first, to highlight a problem that your audience has around an offer, right? We always reverse engineer with our offer first. So before you sit down to write an email, regardless of what email you're writing, if you are going to follow the nurture and sell framework, you definitely want to make sure that you always have an offer in mind first. I am not about creating content just for the sake of creating content. Every piece of content that I write is always linked to an offer, because otherwise, what's the point, right? We should always be talking about our offers. But as you just saw, it doesn't have to be in a sleazy way. There is a way to actually be able to sell every single day when you use something like the Nurture and Sell framework. So don't overteach. Don't feel like you have to include all this amount of content. It can be short, snappy, whatever your way of writing is. And you always want to give someone the option to buy. It is not buy now. It is, if you're ready, want this thing, right? You will see if you go through the Nurture and Sell framework training that the different ways that you can draft your call to action are very much focused on permission-based selling. So if you're ready for coaching, accountability, and implementation, guidance, support, all the things, then I'd love for you to come and check out the feedback loop. The link on your screen is where you can go, or you can just simply check out the link in the description. And I can't wait to work with you soon. And in the next video that is coming up on your screen, I'm going to be sharing 3 collaboration strategies that have brought me the most amazing dream clients. And I'm going to share how you can replicate this for yourself too. I'll see you in that video.